The waitress was slapped during her shift 18 minutes later. The Mafia boss walked in. The rain in Port Ashbury does not just fall. It tries to drown the neon. It hammered the roof of the Blue Lantern, a 24/7 diner that smelled like old coffee grounds and fried ambitions. My name is Lila Quintero, and this was my kingdom of cracked vinyl and lukewarm ketchup bottles. 3 nights a week, I orbited the tables, a ghost in a powder blue uniform, navigating the symphony of clattering plates, the hiss of the flat top, and the lonely whine of a saxophone bleeding from the jukebox. It was just past 2 in the morning. The air was thick with grease and the quiet desperation of men who had nowhere better to be. Then there was Royce Kellen. He was a fixture, same as the flickering light over booth 4. Royce was a low-level cog in the Iron Ledger crew, a man who thought his minor league reputation made him a king. Tonight, he was planted in his usual spot, nursing a beer he had been complaining about for an hour. "What is this? Quintero?" He shoved the bill toward me, his finger jabbing the paper. "You charging me for air? Now $18.50 for a burger and 2 beers. I kept my smile pinned in place, the one I reserved for difficult children and grown men acting like them. That's the price. Royce, same as last week. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a greasy whisper that still managed to carry, "You know, I look at you, and I wonder why they even bother. You're slow, you're plain, you probably cannot even add right. Maybe you should be working the docks, not a counter." My spine stiffened. I could feel the eyes of the other patrons, a couple of long-haul truckers. A night shift nurse land on us. This was the dance. He insults, I absorb. He pays, he leaves. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Royce. "Yeah," he sneered, standing up. He was taller than I expected. All puffed up grievance. "You can get this." The sound of his open palm connecting with my cheek was sharp, like a plank of wood snapping. It was not a movie slap. It was a heavy, stinging impact that sent my head whipping to the side. The world went white for a second, then red. A fresh pot of coffee, the one I had just been holding, crashed to the checkered floor. Brown liquid and glass shards sprayed across the linoleum. Silence. The diner did not just get quiet, it ceased to exist. The jukebox choked mid-sax solo. The fry cook froze, spatula in the air. I saw the small red eye of the security camera above the register blink. A silent, useless witness. My cheek was on fire, a deep, radiating throb that already tasted like copper. I could feel the blood bead at the corner of my mouth. No one moved. No one said a word. In Port Ashbury, you learn to mind the mess that belongs to the Iron Ledger. My manager, Sal, waddled out from the back office, wiping his hands on an already filthy apron. His eyes darted from me to Royce, then to the floor, then back to Royce. He licked his lips. "Royce, come on, it's late," Sal muttered, trying for placating. Royce just grinned, a triumphant, ugly twisting of his lips. He looked back at me. "Clean it up." Sal put a sweaty hand on my arm. "Lila, just apologize. For the coffee, we don't need trouble." Apologize. The word hung in the air, heavier and fouler than the smell of burnt bacon. My pride, the only thing I owned outright, reared up inside me, screaming. But pride did not pay the $200 past due on my apartment at the Harborview. Pride did not keep the lights on. I felt the familiar, cold panic of the rent check breathing down my neck. I did not apologize. I did not cry. Slowly, I straightened my spine. I reached up and, with a steady hand, wiped the small trickle of blood from my lip with my thumb. I looked directly at Royce Kellen, holding his gaze until he was the one who shifted, unnerved. I let my eyes drop, not in submission, but to the parking lot outside. I watched him climb into his beat-up black pickup truck. I memorized the license plate. Kilo 79er Echo Victor Tango. It was a reflex, a small, sharp piece of self-preservation. He peeled out, tires screaming against the wet pavement, leaving me in the wreckage of the diner's silence. Sal sighed, already grabbing a mop. "Lila, go take 5, in the back." I just shook my head and grabbed a rag from under the counter, kneeling to pick up the larger pieces of glass. My hand was shaking now, the adrenaline starting to curdle. Exactly 18 minutes later, the bell above the door chimed. It was not a chime. Really, the door swung open with such controlled force that the glass pane rattled in its frame, and the wind whipped a flurry of rain halfway to the counter. The man who entered did not just block the light. He seemed to absorb it. He wore a dark, heavy wool trench coat that was impeccably tailored and barely damp, as if the rain itself was hesitant to touch him. He paused at the threshold, his gaze sweeping the room once. He was not looking for anyone. He was cataloging. The truckers hunched lower over their mugs. Sal visibly paled. I had never seen him before, but I knew who he was. Everyone in Port Ashbury knew the name, even if they had never seen the face. Angelo Bastone, the head of the Bastone Syndicate. He was a whisper, a rumor of quiet power that operated in the shadows beneath the iron ledger's clumsy noise. He moved with a silence that was terrifying. He did not walk to the booth, he simply arrived at it. He slid into the same vinyl seat Royce had just vacated, the one still warm with body heat and malice. He shrugged the coat from his shoulders, revealing a crisp white shirt and a simple black tie. I picked up the remaining pieces of the broken mug, my heart hammering against my ribs. Why was he here? A man like Angelo Bastone did not eat at the Blue Lantern. He did not eat in places where the light bulbs flickered. The rain outside seemed to intensify, braiding itself into his shadow as he sat there, a living piece of the city's dark folklore. He did not look at the menu. He did not look at me until I was standing beside the table, pad in hand. His eyes were dark, and they missed nothing, least of all the angry, swelling mark on my cheek. He reached into his inner coat pocket and produced a small, impossibly heavy-looking silver lighter. Placing it on the table, it gleamed under the cheap fluorescent lights. "Burnt pancakes," he said. His voice was low, a rumble, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "Black coffee." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I turned to leave. "Waitress." I stopped, turning back. He had not moved, but he had taken something else from his pocket. It was a handkerchief, not paper, but real, heavy silk, folded into a perfect white square. He placed it on the Formica table, just in front of me, next to the lighter. He looked from the handkerchief to my face, his expression unreadable. "You have the right," Angelo Bastone said, his voice quiet but cutting through the diner's hum, "to reclaim your air." I brought the order to his table. The pancakes, charred at the edges, the coffee, black as the asphalt outside. My hand was steady, but I could feel the tremor deep in my chest, a vibration from the impact. I set the plate and mug down on the Formica. Angelo Bastone did not look at the food. His gaze was locked on my face, specifically on the angry, purpled swelling that was tightening the skin of my cheek. He was quiet for a long moment, simply observing, as if cataloging the damage. His name, he said, it was not a question. It was a demand, delivered in a voice so low it barely stirred the air between us. I gripped the edge of my empty tray, the smell of his coat, clean wool and expensive tobacco, cut through the diner's smell of stale grease. I could have given him the name, Kilo 7 Niner Echo Victor Tango. I could have watched this quiet, dangerous man unleash whatever storm he commanded onto Royce Kellen. Part of me, the part that was stinging and humiliated, wanted to... But in Port Ashbury, names are currency, and I was broke, not stupid. I met his gaze. "I don't sell names. I only sell meals." A flicker of something I could not identify, not amusement, maybe approval, moved in the depths of his dark eyes. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He picked up his fork, turning his attention to the pancakes. I had just turned to walk away when the diner door flew open, slamming hard against the interior wall. The bell did not chime. It screamed in protest. Royce Kellen was back, and this time, he was not alone. He had 2 men with him, both built like refrigerators. Wearing the same mud-stained iron ledger jackets, they fanned out, flanking the entrance, blocking the only way out. Their presence sucked the remaining warmth from the room. The two truckers in Booth 1 suddenly found the salt shakers fascinating. Sal, my manager, vanished into the kitchen, a ghost retreating to his haunt. Royce swaggered forward, his face blotchy and red. He had clearly spent the last 18 minutes in his truck, drinking up his courage and his rage. "You?" he shouted, jabbing a thick finger at me. "You think you can just stand there after what you did? You cost me money spilling that coffee." I came back to settle the score, and he was trying to reestablish his territory, playing to his audience of two. He advanced toward the counter, then stopped, finally noticing the man in his booth. He squinted, his small eyes taking in Angelo's expensive coat and measured calm. Royce, in his profound ignorance, mistook stillness for weakness. He did not recognize the apex predator sitting in his spot. "Who the hell is this?" Royce sneered, gesturing with his thumb. "Your new boyfriend, the one who pays for your time." He let out a harsh laugh. "Get out of my seat, old man. I'm not done here." Angelo Bastone did not stand up. He did not look at the two mountains of muscle blocking the door. He simply continued to look at Royce, with a slowness that felt deliberate and menacing. Angelo picked up his black coffee mug. He moved it carefully to the far side of the table. He used one finger to slide the plate of pancakes slightly to the left. He had cleared the center of the Formica tabletop, creating a stark, empty arena between them. It was an invitation. "You have poor manners," Angelo said. His voice was unchanged, still a quiet rumble, but it cut through Royce's bluster like a razor. "I'll show you manners," Royce growled. He lunged, reaching across the table. His hand clawed to grab the front of Angelo's shirt. It was the fastest thing I have ever seen. Angelo's left hand moved, but not to block. It moved to his right wrist, where he calmly adjusted his cufflink, pulling the sleeve back perhaps half an inch. As his right hand came up, it was holding the heavy silver lighter he had placed on the table earlier. He did not punch. He did not strike. He caught Royce's descending wrist in the same fluid motion. He twisted his own hand, using the solid metal base of the lighter as a fulcrum, and slammed Royce's arm, wrist down against the hard, unforgiving edge of the wooden table. There was no blood, there was no theatrical crack, there was only a sickening, muffled thud of flesh and bone impacting wood under an immense, perfectly focused pressure. Royce made a sound that was not human. It was a choked, strangled gasp, as if all the air in his body had been forced out through his throat. His eyes bulged wide, his face instantly turning a deep, mottled purple. His knees buckled, but Angelo held him there, pinned to the table by that single, crushing point of contact on his wrist. The two goons froze, their bravado evaporating, suddenly realizing they were standing in a room with something their muscles could not handle. Angelo Bastone leaned forward, just an inch. The diner was so quiet I could hear the rain tapping on the window pane. "Apologize to her," Angelo commanded. It was not a request, it was a verdict. Royce tried to speak. A wet, gurgling sound was all that came out. He was trembling violently, sweat popping on his forehead, his other hand weakly clawing at Angelo's grip. Angelo applied a fraction more pressure. Royce gasped, his voice cracking into a pathetic squeal. I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry." Angelo held him there for one beat longer. Two. Then, as calmly as he had grabbed him, he released his grip. He just opened his hand. Royce collapsed to the floor, pulling his savaged wrist to his chest. He was openly weeping now, high-pitched, humiliating sobs echoing in the stunned silence. His two friends, their faces pale, scrambled forward. They did not look at Angelo. They hauled their whimpering boss to his feet and dragged him backward out the door, into the rain. I was shaking. I grabbed the edge of the counter, my knuckles white, but it was not fear. I had been afraid of Royce. This was something else entirely. This was awe. It felt as if the foundations of the world had just been tilted. It felt like a great, invisible scale, one that had always been weighted against me, had just been violently slammed back into balance by this man. A cosmic order I never knew existed had just shifted, and it had shifted in my favor. Angelo Bastone calmly picked up his coffee mug and took a sip. He glanced at the pancakes, then pushed the plate away, his appetite apparently gone. He stood, shrugging back into his heavy wool coat. He pulled a thick clip of money from his trousers. He peeled off several large bills, hundreds, not 20s, and dropped them on the counter. "This is for her," he said, nodding toward me but speaking to Sal, who had reappeared, his face the color of raw dough, "and for everyone else's meal tonight, and the coffee she dropped." He added another bill, crisp and new, for the tip. It was more money than I made in 2 months. He started for the door, then paused. He looked back at me, his face unreadable in the dim light. He walked to the counter, picked up the white silk handkerchief he had offered me, the one I had not taken, and pushed it gently toward my hand. "Keep it," he said. Then he was gone. The door closed softly behind him, the bell a polite, quiet ding. The diner erupted in noise. The truckers were suddenly talking. Sal was counting the money. The night shift nurse was asking if I was okay. I ignored them and walked to the front window, the silk handkerchief clutched in my hand. The rain was letting up, turning to a fine mist. Outside, I saw Royce's black pickup truck scrambling to life. The engine roared, the headlights cutting through the fog. As the truck jerked away from the curb, its taillights flashed, illuminating the driver's side mirror for just a second. Drawn in the condensation, clean and stark, was a single letter. A warning, a signature, an answer. My shift ended at 4 a.m. Sal, still giddy from the unexpected windfall, had already locked the register and told me I could leave. I peeled off the blue uniform in the tiny back closet, the smell of burnt coffee and Sal's nervous sweat clinging to the fabric. My cheek was no longer stinging. It had graduated to a deep, profound throb, a heavy weight pulling one side of my face down. I pulled my thin jacket tight and pushed the diner's glass door open, expecting nothing but the empty, rain-slicked street. He was there. The long, black car was parked at the curb, an obsidian slash against the gray pavement. It was not a modern car, it was old, heavy, and polished to a gleam that seemed to drink the weak streetlights. He was not in it. He was standing on the sidewalk, holding a large black umbrella, creating a small, perfect circle of dryness in the relentless drizzle. He did not speak. He did not beckon. He just waited. I hesitated. My apartment was only 6 blocks. I walked it every night. Walking it alone was part of the armor I wore. But tonight, the armor was cracked. I looked at him, a man who moved in shadows and spoke in verdicts, and I felt something other than fear. I felt a strange, gravitational pull. I walked the few steps and stood under the edge of the umbrella. The sudden quiet, the absence of tiny drops hitting my hair and shoulders, was a relief so profound it almost made me dizzy. "You live at the Harbor View," he said. Again, not a question. "Yes, I will walk you." He fell into step beside me, and we moved off the main drag toward the piers. He held the umbrella steady, adjusting his long stride to match my shorter, hurried one. We did not speak. The only sounds were our footsteps on the wet concrete and the distant metallic groan of the shipyard. Port Ashbury is different by the water at night. The city proper goes dark, but the harbor awakens. The massive cranes, skeletal and huge, were lit up. The endless stacks of shipping containers glowed under powerful floodlights, red, green, and blue, casting a chemical haze over the docks. They were like constellations for a world made of steel, a sky of industrial stars. The air was sharp, thick with the smell of river water, salt, and diesel. I was intensely aware of him. He was a wall of warmth and wool beside me. I could feel the heat radiating from his coat. This was a man who had crippled another man for me, and he was now walking me home like a gentleman. The contradiction was a humming wire stretched taut between us. "You should have that looked at," he said. his voice low, directed at the glowing cranes ahead. "It is just a bruise," I said, my hand instinctively rising to cover it. "I have ice at home." The silence stretched again, but it was not empty. It was filled with the things we were not saying. I found myself wanting to fill it, a waitress's habit of smoothing over discomfort. "My mother was a nurse," I said, the words tumbling out. Surprising me. She always said ice and pressure could fix 90% of the world's problems. She died. A long time ago. Pneumonia. He turned his head, his gaze settling on me. He did not offer condolences. He just listened. After she was gone, it was just me and my dad, Noel Quintero. He worked down here. I gestured toward the massive, dark shape of Pier 9. He was a waymaster. 10 years ago. There was a fire, a bad one, at that pier. They said it was faulty wiring. He disappeared that night. They never found him. Not a body, not a trace. Just gone. I stopped, horrified at myself. I never told anyone that. It was a cold, hard stone I carried inside me, and I had just handed it to a stranger, to Angelo Bastone. He did not reply, and he looked away from me, back toward the dark water and the silhouette of Pier 9. His eyes narrowed slightly, his brow furrowing. I could almost see the gears turning, the pieces of my pathetic little story clicking into a machine much larger than I could comprehend. He was not hearing a sad memory. He was processing data. We reached the rusted iron gate of the Harborview apartment building. The single yellow bulb above the door cast a sickly light, illuminating the cracks in the concrete steps. I stepped out from under the umbrella, back into the world of rain. The mist was finer now, almost gentle. "This is it. Thank you for the walk. And for... before?" He stood on the sidewalk, a tall, dark figure anchored in the night. "The handkerchief," he said. "May I have it back?" Oh, right. I had jammed it into my jacket pocket, a crumpled ball of silk. I pulled it out, my fingers fumbling. I had forgotten I was even holding it. As I unfolded the square, intending to hand it back, my thumb brushed against something stiff in the corner. Stitching. I angled it toward the weak porch light. My heart, which had been hammering, seemed to stop altogether. In neat, precise black thread, almost invisible against the white silk, were two lines. Pier 90317. My blood went cold. I looked up, clutching the fabric. "Pier 9, I whispered, the words barely audible. 317, what is this? That was my father's pier. Angelo Bastone took a step closer, moving from the sidewalk to the bottom step, bringing him into the weak yellow light with me. He was close now, close enough for me to see the individual raindrops caught in his dark hair. He raised his hand, the one that had held Royce's wrist, and I flinched, expecting him to touch the bruise. He stopped. His fingers hovered an inch from my swollen cheek. I could feel the heat of his skin, a phantom touch that was almost more intimate than contact. He held it there, his gaze locked on mine, not with pity, but with a terrifying intensity. "Do not work the night shift tomorrow," he said. His voice was not a suggestion. It was a quiet, absolute order. He did not move his hand. I did not move. I just breathed, inhaling the air he occupied. The smell of his tobacco, the one I had noticed in the diner, was clearer now. It was not the acrid smoke of a cheap cigarette. It was something else. It was crisp, expensive, and laced with the sharp, clean scent of mint. It was the smell of controlled fire. I knew, with a sudden startling clarity, that I would remember that smell for the rest of my life. He lowered his hand, stepped back, and turned. He did not say goodbye. He walked to the corner, where the black car had reappeared as if summoned from the mist itself. He got in. The door closed with a solid, expensive thunk, and the car slid away, its red taillights vanishing into the rain. I stood there, my key in my hand, watching the car disappear, and that is when I saw it. Across the street, parked deep in the shadow of a derelict warehouse, was a black sedan. Its lights were off, its engine was cold. It had been there the entire time, watching him, watching me. As I stared, a tiny red light, the cherry of a cigarette, flared once in the driver's seat and then was gone. I scrambled inside. Fumbling the key into the lock, I ran up the 3 flights of stairs to my apartment, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I slammed the door, threw the deadbolt, and slid the chain across. I leaned against the wood, gasping. My whole body was trembling. He had left, and he had left the handkerchief. I stumbled to my small kitchen table and spread the silk out under the light. Pier 90317. This was not a coincidence. This was not kindness. This was a message. He had known. Before he ever walked into the diner, before he ever ordered his pancakes, he had known. He knew about my father. He knew about the fire. The rain beat against the glass, a frantic drumming that matched the panic in my throat. I pressed the cool, impossible piece of silk to my hot, throbbing cheek. The question that had been floating in my mind all night solidified, hard and sharp. Why me? I did not go to work. I called Sal just after noon, my voice a deliberate, raspy whisper. I told him I was sick, that the hit to my face had given me a migraine. It was only half a lie. Sal's voice was a high-pitched squeak, all his false managerial authority gone. Lila, yeah, sure, take the night, take 2. Listen, kid, I do not know what you are into, but you need to be careful. 2 men were here this morning. Not like Royce. Different, clean suits. They were asking about you, where you live, what your schedule is. He paused, and I heard him swallow hard. The word, Lila, the word on the street is you have something that belongs to a dead man. Just be careful. The line clicked dead. Something that belongs to a dead man. The silk handkerchief was in my pocket, a heavy, cold square against my leg. Pier 90317. I did not go to my apartment. I went to the East Pier Library. It smelled the way all old libraries do, like paper dust, floor wax, and forgotten stories. The librarian, a woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, looked at the purple bloom on my cheek but said nothing. I walked past the fiction stacks, past the quiet old men reading the day's papers, and went to the basement, to the archives. I sat at a rattling microfiche reader, the machine humming and casting a sickly green light on my hands. I spooled through the archives of the Port Ashbury Chronicle, winding the crank until my fingers ached, until the date in the corner read 10 years ago. I found the fire. It was a front-page story for 2 days. Inferno at Pier 9, tragedy on the waterfront. I read the official report, the one quoted from the Harbor-wide Commerce Authority. It was exactly what I remembered, a suspected electrical leak, faulty wiring. A tragic accident. There was a short list of the missing, the dock workers presumed dead, consumed by the blaze, and there, 4th on the list, Noel Quintero, my father. It was all too neat, a clean story to close a messy file. I kept digging, spooling back, scanning the weeks before the fire. I was looking for anything, a strike, a complaint, a name. I found him. It was a different article, a boring one about shipping volumes increasing by 10%. The photo was grainy, shot from a distance, meant to show the activity on the dock, but I knew him. I would have known him anywhere. My father, Noel Quintero. He was standing on the dock, a clipboard in hand, arguing with a man in a suit. He looked tired, but he was animated, jabbing a finger at the paper in his hand. But it was not the argument that held my gaze. It was the container behind him. I cranked the focus knob, the image blurring and then snapping into sharp, grainy relief. On the side of the massive corrugated steel box was a stenciled logo. It was not a company name. It was an image, a simple, stylized silhouette of a black hawk, its wings spread, captured in a dive. I had spent enough time around the docks, enough time listening to my father, to know the shipping lines. This hawk was not one of them. A shadow fell across the microfiche screen, blocking the light. I smelled him before I saw him. Stale beer, sweat, and a new, sharp tang of antiseptic. I turned slowly. Royce Kellen. My breath caught in my throat. He was not supposed to be here. This was a library, a place of quiet, a sanctuary. He looked terrible. His face was a swollen, mottled mess of purple and yellow. His right eye nearly closed. His left wrist was wrapped in a thick, professional bandage. He was not wearing his iron ledger jacket. He was just a man, a broken and pathetic man, and that made him infinitely more dangerous. He did not look at me. He pretended to scan the shelves of bound newspapers behind me, his body angled away, a coward's posture. "You're a dead woman," he hissed, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that barely carried. "You and your fancy man. You think you are smart. You think he bought you the world. But you do not have it, do you?" I stared at the back of his head, my heart hammering. "He is going to find out you are useless," Royce muttered, his fingers tracing the spine of a book he was not seeing. "He's going to find out you are just a waitress with a stupid face. You should have just taken the slap." My voice came out, thin but cold. "I do not know what you're talking about." He finally turned, his one good eye fixing on me. It was filled with a desperate animal hatred, the ledger, the shipping ledger, the one your old man stole before he got what he deserved, the one he died for. He was breathing hard, his words coming in ragged puffs. "He's looking for it, Bastogne, and he thinks you have it, but you do not." He laughed, a wet, choking sound. "You are just the bait." He swiped his uninjured arm across the shelf, sending a cascade of heavy newspaper binders crashing to the floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. The librarian at the front desk shouted, "Hey!" Royce looked at me one last time. "He got cooked, and you are next." He turned and bolted, shoving past a man who was entering the aisle, and ran up the stairs. I heard his heavy boots pounding on the marble floor above, and then the slam of the front door. I sat there, shaking, the microfiche machine humming in front of me, the one your old man stole, my father, a thief, the fire, not an accident. Royce had just handed me the truth, a truth I had buried for 10 years. I rewound the film, my hands slick with sweat. I packed my bag. I had to get home. As I pushed through the library's heavy doors, I paused. The street was quiet, the afternoon light weak. Across the road, parked next to a fire hydrant, was a dark blue sedan. It was not the same one from last night, but it was the same type. 2 men sat in the front seat, both looking forward, not at me. They were clean, their suits dark, their hair short. They were not iron ledger thugs. They were soldiers. They were Angelo's. Sal was right. I was being watched. But this was not surveillance. It was a guard. Angelo had put a perimeter on me. I walked, not toward my apartment, but away from it. I cut through the fish market, the smell of ice and salt stinging my nose. I ducked into an alley behind a bakery, the air thick and warm with the smell of bread. I walked for an hour, looping, doubling back, watching my own shadow, watching the reflections in shop windows. No one followed. The sedan had not moved. They were not tailing me. They were guarding the box. When I was finally sure I was alone, I approached my apartment from the back. Through the alley, I climbed the rusted fire escape, my feet silent on the metal. I slid my window open an inch. Nothing. I went around to the front hall. The building was silent. I climbed the 3 flights, my ears straining. I reached my door. Unit 3. B. A small corner of a white envelope was sticking out from under the door. I froze. It was not a mail slot. Someone had to have bent down right here and pushed it under. I looked down the hall. Empty. My fingers trembled as I plucked it from the floor. I unfolded the cheap paper. There was no signature. Just 5 words, written in a heavy, blocky script with a black marker. "Do not touch the hawk. It swallows people." I scrambled inside, my key rattling in the lock. I threw the deadbolt, slid the chain, and leaned against the door, my heart trying to escape my chest. Someone had been here. They knew. They knew I had been to the library. They knew I had found the hawk. My eyes scanned my small room. Everything was as I had left it. The unmade bed, the dirty coffee cup on the counter. No, not everything. On my small Formica kitchen table sat a package. It was wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with rough twine. It had not been there this morning. I had locked my door. I had checked it. The chain had not been on, but the deadbolt was... I walked toward it, my legs feeling like water. Did Angelo's men put it here? Did the person who left the note? I touched the paper. It was dry. I circled the table. No name. No address. I pulled the twine. It snapped. I tore the paper away. Underneath was a book, a small, black notebook. The cover was thick, rubberized, the kind that was waterproof, the kind a weighmaster on a wet dock might use to keep his notes dry. I picked it up. It was heavy for its size. I ran my thumb over the cover, and then I felt it on the back. I turned it over, burned deep into the material. 2 small, precise characters. I knew the handwriting. It was a Q and a 9 merged together. Q9. My father's mark. It was his. After 10 years. Royce was right. Sal was right. My father had stolen it. He had not been cooked with it. He had hidden it. And now, after a Mafia boss had bought me pancakes, after I had been followed and warned, it had found its way home. I sat at the table for hours, the black notebook unopened. The sky outside my window turned from the gray of afternoon to a deep, bruised purple, and finally, to the pitch black of the Port Ashbury night. The rain had returned, a soft, steady drumming that matched the fear in my veins. I was holding a ghost, a 10-year-old ghost that Royce Kellen had tried to warn me about, that a stranger had pushed under my door. I was bait. A knock. It was not loud. It was 3 precise, quiet raps on the wood. It was not the police, and it was not Royce. It was him. I walked to the door, my legs stiff. I looked through the peephole. Angelo Bastone stood in the dim, yellow hallway. His trench coat dark with rain, his hair slicked back. He was not looking at the peephole. He was looking at the wood of the door, as if he could see me through it. I undid the chain, my hand shaking so hard I fumbled with the metal. I turned the deadbolt. I opened the door. He stood a full foot back from the threshold, respecting the space. His men, the ones in the sedan, were nowhere to be seen. He had come alone. His dark eyes scanned my face, noting the fear, then dropped to the black notebook clutched in my hand. He knew. "Let me in," he said, his voice that same low rumble, "only if you feel safe." My apartment was my only sanctuary, the one place I was not a waitress, not a victim, and I was about to invite the most dangerous man in the city inside. But the fear I felt of him was different from the fear I felt of Royce, or of the men who had left the note. His was a cold, sharp fear, like a surgeon's blade. The other was the dull, tearing fear of a butcher. I stepped back, opening the door wider. I nodded. He entered, bringing the smell of the rainy night, mint and wool with him. He filled the small room, his presence shrinking the already tiny space. He did not sit. He did not move to the table. He just stood in the small patch of clear floor by the door, waiting. The single lamp on my table cast a weak, yellow glow. The distant drumming of the rain was the only sound. I walked to the table and held out the notebook. I think this is what you were looking for, what everyone is looking for." My hand was trembling, the book vibrating. "My father's," I whispered. He stepped forward. He did not take the book. Instead, he placed his hand over mine, his fingers wrapping around my hand and the notebook, stilling them both. His skin was warm, his grip impossibly firm, yet there was no pressure. It was not a gesture of taking. It was a gesture of steadying. It anchored me. "Let's see what he died for," he said quietly. We stood there for a long moment, his hand covering mine. Then he released me, and I slid the book onto the table. I opened the cover. The pages were stiff, the ink dark and precise. My father's handwriting. It was not a journal. It was a ledger, just as Royce had said. We read it together, standing side by side under the weak lamplight. It was a meticulous record, lists of container numbers, dates, and weights. Beside them, a second set of weights, the actual weights, and then a third column, filled with symbols I did not understand and names I had never heard. Fake names, from fake way stations. It was a shadow ledger, a record of every lie that had passed through Pier 9. Then, about halfway through, the handwriting changed. It became more hurried. He had started a new section. At the top of the page, underlined twice, was a single word. Hawkline. It was a route, a secret artery pumping poison through Port Ashbury. My father had mapped it. He had listed the containers that used it, the ones with the Black Hawk logo I had seen in the microfiche. He had connected those containers to the Harbor-wide Commerce Authority and to the agency that backed them. He had names. I felt Angelo go still beside me, his focus sharpened, his body tensing. "This," he said, his voice almost a whisper, his finger tracing the word Hawkline. "This is it." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes beyond that unnerving calm. I saw danger. Not from him, but for me. "This ledger," he said, "is enough to burn the Iron Ledger to the ground and the men in the city government who protect them." He closed the book, his hand resting on the waterproof cover. "The danger you were in last night. Lila, it was nothing. A dog snapping at your heels. This—" He tapped the book. "This is the whole pack. They will not send Royce Kellen for this. They will send men like me, or worse." He turned, facing me fully, blocking out the rest of the room. "I do not want you to be the bait," he said, his voice rough. The air between us was electric, thick with the unsaid. He was offering me an out. He could take the book, and I could run. I could go back to being the girl with the rent check, the girl who gets slapped, the girl who survives. But I looked at the book, at my father's handwriting, and I thought of the 10 years I had spent believing he had just vanished, believing the lie of an electrical fire. "I don't want to just be the victim," I said, my voice shaking, but clear. "He was my father. They did not just kill him, they erased him. I am not bait. Angelo, I am his daughter. I have a right to this. I have a right to the truth." He watched me, his gaze intense. We were so close now. I could see the small, faded scar that cut through his left eyebrow. I could feel the heat radiating from his chest. We were breathing the same air, caught in the same small bubble of light, with the rain and the city and the danger held at bay by my locked door. He raised his hand, the same way he had on the steps of my building, slowly. He did not go for my bruised cheek this time. His fingers brushed a strand of hair back from my face, his touch so light it was barely there. "Is this okay?" he whispered. The question hung between us. He was not asking about the book. He was not asking about the case. He was asking about this, about us, in this room, a man with blood on his hands asking a waitress for permission. My heart was not hammering. It was beating, a slow, heavy, painful thud. I could not speak. I just nodded. He leaned in, his lips brushing mine. It was not a kiss of passion, not the kind that steals your breath. It was a question, a promise, and an answer all at once. It was hesitant, impossibly gentle. It was the first moment of true, unadulterated safety I had felt in my entire life. I whispered, "It is." He kissed me then, and all the tension, all the fear of the last 2 days seemed to unspool from me. His other hand came up, his palm resting flat on my back. Through the thin cotton of my shirt, it was warm and solid, a shield. I leaned into it, my hands coming up to rest on his chest. I felt his hand on my back, tense, as if to pull me closer, but then I gripped his wrist, my fingers closing over the cuff of his shirt. He stopped, instantly. He pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes questioning, not angry. A small smile touched my lips. "Slow down." A corresponding smile, a ghost of one, lightened his dark features. He understood. He adjusted his stance, not pulling me, but simply holding me, supporting me. He leaned his forehead against mine. We just stood there, his hand on my back, mine on his chest, our foreheads touching, breathing. We listened to the rain. The intimacy of that moment, of that shared, quiet breath, was more profound than any touch. It was not about desire. It was about trust. It was about protection. After a long time, he straightened up. He took off his heavy trench coat, the one still damp from the rain, and draped it over my shoulders. It was impossibly heavy, a weighted blanket that smelled of him, wool and mint and safety. He looked at my cheek, the bruise now a faded, ugly yellow and purple. He leaned down and pressed his lips to the spot, a kiss so soft it was just a breath of warmth. It was a promise, sealed without a word. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice decisive, back to the man who gave orders. "The note on the handkerchief. Pier 9, 3:17 in the morning. That was not a memory. Lila, it was an appointment." I pulled the coat tighter around me. "Hawkline," I said. He nodded, his eyes hard. "We break into that pier, and we find whatever your father was pointing to." 10 minutes past 3 in the morning. Pier 9 was a graveyard of steel and shadows. The only sounds were the lapping of the oily water against the pylons and the high, thin whine of the wind through the cranes. The air was bitingly cold, coating every metal rail in a fine, slick layer of frost. I pulled the leather gloves tighter. They were Angelo's. He had passed them to me in the car, his own hands bare. He was working on the massive padlock of the main warehouse door. He did not use a lockpick. He used a set of specialized electric pliers. Humming almost silently, there was a faint click, a snap of metal, and the heavy lock fell into his hand. He did not let it drop. He pocketed it. No trace. He pushed the corrugated metal door just enough for us to slip through, a black slit in the darkness. Inside, the warehouse was a cavern. It smelled of rust, old burlap, and the cold salt of the river. The moonlight was weak, cut into sharp beams by the high, dirty windows. Angelo clicked on a small, powerful flashlight, not sweeping it, but holding it steady, aimed at the floor, illuminating our path. We moved between mountains of shipping containers, a maze of colored steel. I had my father's notebook in my jacket pocket, the Q9 mark pressing against my ribs. "He said it was near the east wall," I whispered, my voice sounding impossibly loud in the tomb. "We found it. Container 7B. It was stacked 3 high, but this one was on the bottom. It was dark blue, the paint flaking, and there, so faded it was almost invisible, was the logo from the microfiche, the Black Hawk, diving." I pulled out the notebook, shielding the beam of Angelo's light with my body. I flipped to the Hawkline section. My finger traced the entry. "Q9, I breathed. Container 7B. It matches." Angelo nodded. "All business." He was already examining the container's heavy locking bar. That is when the world exploded in light. Headlights, 4 pairs of them flooding the warehouse, turning the dusty air into a blinding white stage. They pinned us against the blue steel of the container. Engines roared, echoing off the metal walls. Doors slammed. "Well, well, well," Royce Kellen's voice boomed. "Triumphant and ugly. Trowso, Kobupby, hand over the ledger, doll." He stepped out from behind the glare, his bandaged wrist held protectively at his chest. He had at least 6 men with him. Iron ledger thugs, all holding pipes or bats. They fanned out, cutting off any escape. "I knew you would come here, you stupid—" Angelo did not let him finish. He did not reach for a gun. He moved to the wall, to the main utility panel. In one smooth, violent motion, he ripped the heavy breaker bar down. The warehouse plunged into absolute, terrifying darkness. The headlights died. The overhead lights that had tried to flicker on died. We were blind. A moment of pure silence. Then Royce's panicked voice. "Get the lights! Get your damn flashlights on!" Click, click, fish! 3 powerful flashlights suddenly snapped on, but they were not in the hands of Royce's men. They were on the floor, on top of other containers, positioned behind the thugs, aimed at the entrance where they stood. Angelo had been here before us. He had set the stage. The beams cut through the darkness, backlighting the entire crew. They were a cluster of black, Confused silhouettes, blinded by their own shadows, unable to see anything in the dark recesses of the warehouse where we stood. "Where are they?" Royce screamed. And Angelo was gone. He had vanished from my side. It was just a whisper of movement, a V-shape of his trench coat disappearing between two stacks of containers. "Lila," Royce shouted, "I know you are here. You cannot hide." One of his men, a large brute, stepped forward, squinting into the gloom. He moved past the disorienting backlight and into the maze. "I hear you, little rat." I was not a rat. I was a waitress. I had shrunk back, my heart trying to claw its way out of my throat. I pressed myself behind a wooden pallet stacked high with drums. My eyes, adjusting to the dark, saw what was in them. A dark, viscous liquid was leaking from one. I put a gloved finger to it. Oil. And next to the pallet, a torn 50-pound bag of rock salt, used for the ice on the piers. I did not think. I acted. My hands, still shaking, grabbed the open bag of salt. I ripped it wider, scattering a wide patch of the crystals on the concrete floor. Then, I kicked the leaking drum, tipping it just enough to send a thick, slow-moving slick of industrial grease spreading across the salt. A perfect, invisible trap. I scrambled back, deeper into the shadows. A shout, a wet thud. I peered around the pallet. Angelo was in motion. He had used the noise of the spill. The first thug was on the ground, his head not bleeding, his arm bent at an angle it was not designed for. Angelo was already moving to the next. It was not a brawl, it was a tactical dissolution. He moved like a shadow, using their own momentum against them. He was a force of leverage and joint locks. A man lunged with a pipe. Angelo redirected the swing, used the pipe to catch the man's own leg, and brought him down in a sickening snap of cartilage. No extra blood, no wasted motion. A second man, trying to circle around, hit my patch of floor. His feet went out from under him. He went airborne, his arms flailing, and crashed backward into a stack of empty metal kegs. The sound was deafening, a cascade of ringing metal. 3 down. Spread out, find them. Royce was hysterical, staying back near the door, a coward to his core. The remaining thugs moved deeper, now more cautious. It was a hunt. I could hear them breathing, cursing in the dark. I could hear the silent, deadly counter-moves from Angelo, a grunt, a sigh of air being forced from lungs, a heavy fall. Then there were 2, then 1, then silence. The only sound was Royce, his breathing ragged and panicked, somewhere near the door. "Bastone, I know it is you. Show yourself." I knew Angelo was winning. I knew he was handling it. I should have stayed hidden, but I saw the container. 7B. I saw my father's name in my mind. I moved. I dashed from behind the pallet, running low, trying to get to the container. I thought Royce was still by the door. I was wrong. A hand clamped onto my jacket, yanking me back so hard my teeth snapped together. He spun me around, and I felt something cold and sharp press against my throat. A knife. "Gotcha," Royce hissed, his breath hot and sour in my ear. He dragged me out from the shadows, back toward the center aisle, using my body as a shield. That is it. Bastone game over. Come out, or she gets a new smile. I saw Angelo then, and he was standing 20 feet away, a silhouette against one of his own flashlights. He was perfectly still. I was not. My mind was racing. Diner knowledge. What do I know? No. Not diner knowledge, library knowledge. I was terrified, the blade pressing into my skin, but I was also angry. I looked up, past Royce's sweating, terrified face, into the rafters. I saw a small, blinking red light. It was the same as the one in the diner. A security camera. My voice was steady. It did not even shake. "Let me go, Royce." "Shut up," he screamed, pressing the knife harder. "No," I said, my voice clear and carrying in the huge, empty space. "You should let me go, because the Harbor-wide Commerce Authority camera right above your head is live." Royce froze. I felt his entire body go rigid. What he whispered. "It is live," I said, projecting. "Just like the one at the diner. They are watching you right now. They are watching you threaten the one person who has the ledger. How long do you think you will last when they find out you blew the whole operation?" He looked up, desperate, trying to find the light I was pointing to. "You are lying." "Am I?" It was the hesitation Angelo needed. It was not a dash, it was an explosion. 3 steps. He crossed the 20 feet in a second. He did not go for the knife. He struck Royce's bandaged wrist, the one that was not holding me, a single, focused, brutal strike with the heel of his palm. Royce screamed, a high-pitched, agonizing sound, his entire body convulsing in pain. His grip on me and the knife vanished. Angelo's arm was around my waist, pulling me back as Royce crumpled to the ground, clutching his ruined arm, sobbing. A low, mournful sound echoed from the river. A ship's horn. Time was up. Angelo did not look at Royce. He pulled me to container 7B. He produced a set of heavy-duty bolt cutters from a bag I had not even seen him carrying. He snapped the heavy seal. With a groan of metal, he pulled the heavy doors open. We aimed our flashlights inside. It was an anticlimax. It was not drugs. It was not guns. It was boxes. Dozens and dozens of simple, brown cardboard banker's boxes. Angelo stepped inside, his light playing over them. He tore one open. It was full of files, financial records, shipping manifests. I tore another one open, more files. Then I saw it. On the side of one box, a small, official-looking stamp. I brushed the dust away. Department of Municipal Integrity. Records do not tamper. My blood ran cold. This was not the Iron Ledger's stash. This was their protection. This was the evidence. This was the city government, hiding their own crimes, protecting the Hawk Line. The ship horn sounded again, closer this time. "We cannot take it all," Angelo said, his voice tense. He pulled a small, high-resolution camera from his coat pocket and began to systematically photograph the files, page by page, his hands moving with incredible speed. "Lila!" I turned. On a small shelf at the back of the container, there was a single, large, manila envelope. It was sealed not with glue, but with a thick, dark red wax. Stamped into the wax was the unmistakable logo of the Black Hawk. I grabbed it. It was heavy, thick with documents. "We go," Angelo said, pocketing his camera. We ran back through the maze of containers, past the groaning, incapacitated bodies of Royce's men. We did not look back. We slipped out the door, into the cold, foggy night. Just as the first hints of gray light began to stain the sky over Port Ashbury, the mirror current was not a bar. It was a vault. It was buried 2 levels beneath a quiet, unassuming tailor shop that Angelo owned. There was no sign, no entrance from the street. You had to go through the tailor's fitting room, press a specific panel of dark wood, and descend a narrow staircase into the earth. The bar itself was silent, all polished mahogany, deep leather armchairs, and a single long mirror behind the bar that gave the room its name. It did not reflect the room. The glass was so dark, it looked like it reflected a different, dimmer version of the world. We were in a private room off the main floor, Angelo, me, and 3 of his top men. They were not thugs like Royce's. They were soldiers. One was older, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much, named Corrado. The other 2 were younger, twins, dressed in identical sharp suits. They were all looking at the items spread across the heavy oak table, my father's waterproof ledger, the wax-sealed manila envelope, and the high-resolution photographs Angelo had taken inside the container. Corrado, the older man, picked up one of the photos showing the Department of Municipal Integrity stamp. He put it down as if it were burning him. "Angelo, this is not our fight," he said, his voice a respectful, gravelly rumble. "The Iron Ledger are animals. We swat them. This." He tapped the photo. "This is the city. This is the harbor-wide authority. This is the government. You do not poke the government. You poke the government. You do not pull back a stump. You pull back the whole damn forest." One of the twins nodded. "He is right, boss. This is poison. We leak the ledger. We burn the ledger. Fine. But these files, this ties us to a political hit. We pull this pin. The whole grenade goes off in our hand. Angelo was silent. He was at the head of the table, his silver lighter clicking open and shut in his hand. Click, snap, click, snap. The sound was the only percussion in the room. He was listening, his face a mask. My hands were balled into fists in my lap. I had been a waitress, a victim, a runner. I was sitting in a Mafia war room, and they were talking about my father's life as if it were a poker chip. "It is my father's," I said. The room went silent. Click, snap. All four men turned to look at me. Corrado's expression was pitying. The twins' was dismissive. Angelo's was just watchful. "This is not your world, little girl," Corrado said, his voice gentle but firm. "You got your justice. The man who hit you is broken. Walk away. Take the win." "That was not justice," I said, my voice rising, stronger than I expected. "That was an introduction. That book on the table, that is my name. That is my blood. You do not get to decide what to do with it." I looked at Angelo, challenging him. "You brought me this far. You put my father's name back in my mouth. I have a right to decide how this ends." The twins looked at Angelo, waiting for him to put me in my place. Angelo stopped clicking the lighter. He set it on the table. He looked at Corrado. "She stays. She has a voice. Now, the files." The shift in the room was immediate. The pity, the dismissal, it vanished. I was no longer a civilian. I was a player. Angelo slid the manila envelope toward me. "You first." I broke the wax seal. My hands were perfectly steady. I pulled out the contents. It was not just a letter. It was a small stack of papers. On top was a handwritten note, my father's hand. "Lila, if you are reading this," the hawk found me. I tried to do it the right way. I found the discrepancy. The weights were off, not by a little, by a metric ton. Seaflax Logistics. It is a ghost. It does not exist, but it is moving millions through Pier 9. I looked up, my eyes wide. Seaflax Logistics. It is in the ledger. Angelo nodded, his face grim. "A shell company. Keep reading." I took it to my supervisor. He told me to forget it. I took it higher. I took it to Vernon Maddox, at the Harbor-wide Authority. He smiled. He told me I was a good man and that he would handle it. 2 days later, my manifests were audited. Then the threats started. "The fire is not an accident. Lila, they are going to frame me. Say I was the one cooking the books, and then I will have an accident in the blaze. I am giving this to a man I trust, a messenger who owes me his life. He will keep it, and the ledger, until you are old enough to understand. Do not trust the hawk. Do not trust the city. I love you, Dad." The letter was dated, the day of the fire. I sat back, the paper trembling in my hand. He had not been a thief. He had been a whistleblower, and Vernon Maddox had fed him to the wolves. "Vern Maddox," Angelo said, his voice flat and cold, "the senior director of the Harbor-wide Commerce Authority, the man who smiles at charity galas." He looked at the twins. "He has been on the Ledger's payroll for 15 years. He's the hawk line. He uses the Iron Ledger as his muscle and the Department of Municipal Integrity as his cleanup crew. He launders the money through Seaflax, and my organization gets shut out of the port. He has been a thorn in my side for a decade." He had connected it. My father's personal tragedy was his own political problem. A phone buzzed on the table. One of the twins picked it up, read the screen, and his eyes went wide. "Boss, Intel, our source inside the Ledger is singing. Royce is desperate. He's trying to get back in their good graces. He just confirmed the meet. Maddox is moving the rest of the files. He's meeting the Iron Ledger's new chief tomorrow night at the Astoria Bastion View, 2100. They are cleaning house. They are going to move the evidence, destroy the container, and bury the hawkline for good." Angelo smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was sharp and predatory. "No, they are not." A hit at the Astoria Corrado looked horrified. "Angelo, it is a civilian hotel. It is a fortress. It is messy." "It will not be a hit," Angelo said. "It will be a transfer. We take what is ours. We take the files. We take Maddox. We end this." "No," I said. Angelo turned his gaze on me. It was cold again. The brief moment of partnership gone. No. You said it yourself. He is the government. You take Maddox. You start a war you cannot finish. And my father... I looked at the letter. My father tried to do it the right way. He tried to expose them. He did not want a Mafia hit. He wanted the truth. The truth is a luxury, Lila. Not for me. Not this time. I stood up, planting my hands on the table. I have one condition. You want the files. You want to break the Hawk line, fine. We do it, but we do it my way. No needless blood. And we do not just take the files. We make them public. We burn Vern Maddox with the one thing he is terrified of, the light. We make it clean. Corrado actually laughed. Clean, girl. We are the Bastogne Syndicate, not a newspaper. But we can use one, I said. The idea of forming, sharp and clear, the Night Beacon. They are the only independent paper in this city that is not on Maddox's payroll. They would kill for a story like this. Angelo stared at me, his head tilted. He was reassessing me, the lighter still in his hand. It is a two-front war, I said, my voice gaining strength. You call it a transfer. I call it Operation Double Mirror. Angelo raised an eyebrow. You send a team to the Astoria, you make your move, you get the files, but that is the distraction, that is the reflection. The real move, I said, is that at the exact same moment. We leak my father's ledger and the photos from the container to the Night Beacon. The Iron Ledger and Maddox will be too busy fighting you in the hotel to stop the story from breaking. By the time they realize what is happening, their names will be on every street corner. You get your enemy. I get my father's name cleared. Clean. There was a long, stunned silence in the room. Corrado looked at Angelo. Boss, it is brilliant, but it is risky. We would need a line inside. We have one, Angelo said, his eyes never leaving mine. He was smiling again, but this time, it was different. It was genuine. We have Royce. The twins looked confused. Royce, he hates us, he hates her. Royce hates being a loser more, Angelo said. He lost his crew. He lost his hand. He lost his pride. We will get a message to him. We will offer him a choice. He can either go down with Maddox when the ship sinks, or he can be the man who helps us expose the real traitors. We will feed him just enough information to make him look smart. Just enough to get him inside that meeting tomorrow. Close to Maddox. Angelo stood up. Walking around the table to where I stood, he stopped in front of me, looking down at me as an equal. Operation Double Mirror, he said. He held out his hand, palm up. I put my hand in his. His grip was firm, sealing the pact. Together, the meeting bled into the deep hours of the night. The twins, Corrado, and the other soldiers had filtered out of the mirror current, leaving us in the pressurized silence of the vault. The air was heavy with cigar smoke and the weight of the plan. My father's ledger sat on the table, a closed case. Angelo stood, the polished mahogany reflecting his weary posture. I need air, not this air. He did not lead me to the street entrance. He pushed on a panel behind the dark, unreflective mirror, revealing a narrow, steep staircase made of cold iron. It spiraled up and up until he pushed a heavy metal door. The wind hit me first, a sudden, sharp slap of reality. It was cold, and it tasted of the sea, a clean, briny salt that scoured the vault's stale smoke from my lungs. We were on the roof. There was no city like Port Ashbury seen from above in the dark. The grime, the rust, the desperation, it all vanished. Below us, the web of streets and docks glowed. The harbor lights, the neon signs, the thousands of windows formed a sprawling galaxy of amber and blue. It was a second sky, fallen to earth. Far across the water, the Astoria Bastion View Hotel stood like a tower of lit ice, a fortress waiting for us. I walked to the graveled edge, my hands stuffed deep into my pockets. I could feel the stiff corner of my father's notebook through the fabric. The adrenaline of the plan, of Operation Double Mirror, had faded, leaving behind the cold, quiet dread. Angelo. He was standing by the door, a dark shape against the dim light of the stairwell. He just watched me. What if he was not a good man? The wind stole the words, so I said them louder. My father. What if I am fighting for a lie? What if he was just as dirty as Maddox, and they just cut him out? What if this whole thing is just one set of monsters fighting another? The fear had been hiding beneath the anger for days. The fear that the truth I was chasing would be uglier than the lie I had been living. Angelo walked to the ledge, standing beside me. He did not look at me. He looked down at the glittering city below. The truth is always worth more than a safe lie. Lila, he said, his voice a low rumble beneath the wind. A lie keeps you in a cage. Even if it is a comfortable one, the truth, even if it burns, it shows you the way out. It is the only thing that is real. It deserves to be seen. I was shivering, and it was not just from the cold. He saw it. He did not offer me his coat. He had already given me one, and I had left it at my apartment. He just stepped closer, creating a break in the wind. Then he opened his arms. I did not hesitate. I stepped into the space. I buried my face against his chest, my hands balling up the fabric of his shirt. He was solid, a wall of heat and strength, his arms wrapped around me, one hand spreading wide across my back, the other gently cradling the back of my head, his fingers threading into my hair. We stood there for a long time. It was not like the kiss in my apartment, which had been born of shock and safety. This was different. This was two people, on the edge of a war, holding on. He did not rush. He just held me, letting me breathe, letting the tension drain out of me. I tilted my head back to look at him. His face was shadowed, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. He lowered his head, and his lips met mine. It was a slow, searching kiss, deep and sure. It was not demanding. It was an answer. It answered the fear I had just spoken. It answered the loneliness of the last 10 years. It answered the question of why he was here and why I was. His hand moved from my back, his palm sliding up my side, his thumb brushing the skin just below my ribs. My breath hitched. His other hand held my face. His thumb strove for mica over the last, faded remnants of my bruise. He kissed my jaw, his warm breath ghosting across my neck, and a shudder ran through me. My hands, which had been clutching his shirt, moved. I laced my fingers with his, my palm pressing against his. I felt his pulse, strong and steady against my skin. I felt mine, a frantic bird, begin to slow, to match his rhythm. I pulled back, just an inch, needing air. As I did, a strand of my hair, loosened by the wind, caught on the top button of his shirt. I tried to pull it free, but it was snagged. "I am stuck," I whispered, and a small, surprised laugh escaped me. He smiled, a real, unguarded smile that lit his face from the inside. He carefully, gently, untangled the strand of hair, his fingers brushing my cheek as he tucked it behind my ear. The laughter faded, but the lightness remained. He looked at me, his smile gone, replaced by that familiar, serious intensity. He did not move, his hand still cupping my face. "This far?" he asked, his voice rough. "Is this still okay?" My heart which had been beating so wildly, settled into a deep, steady rhythm. He had all the power. He was the apex predator of this city. And he was asking for permission. That respect, that constant, unwavering respect, was the deepest intimacy of all. I did not trust him because he was safe. I trusted him because he was dangerous. And he chose to be gentle. I did not answer with words. I raised my free hand and placed it flat on his chest, directly over his heart. I could feel its solid, measured beat. I nodded. "Just once. Stay. Just a little longer." He understood. He kept my hand, lacing his fingers through mine, and led me away from the exposed ledge to a protected alcove of the roof, sheltered from the wind by a large ventilation unit. He took off his heavy trench coat, the one he had worn from the vault. He spread it on the clean, tarred roof. It was a blanket, a nest. He sat first, his back against the brickwork. I sat beside him, our shoulders touching. He pulled the other half of the non-coat over me, cocooning us both in wool and his lingering scent of mint. We sat in silence, looking out at the second sky. "The burnt pancakes," I said quietly. He turned his head. "What about them? Why you could eat anything? Why those—" He was quiet for a long moment. I thought he would not answer. "My grandmother," he said, his voice distant. "She raised me. She was a terrible cook. She only knew how to make two things, and one of them was pancakes. She burned them, every single time, for 18 years. He paused. "After she was gone. I found that I could not eat them any other way. It is the only thing that still tastes like before." He had given me a piece of himself, a small, human piece that did not fit the Mafia boss. He looked at me. "Your father. The one you are afraid was a monster." I smiled, a small, sad smile. He had this old guitar, a cheap thing with nylon strings. He only knew 3 chords. He played the same song over and over, but he taught me how to tune it. He said if an instrument is in tune, it does not matter how simple the song is. It will sound right. I looked at my hands, now clasped in my lap. He just wanted things to be in tune. That is why he wrote the ledger. We sat in that comfortable silence, 2 stories shared, 2 ghosts honored. "Tomorrow," Angelo said, his voice pulling me back to the present. His tone was heavy. "The Astoria. It will be chaos. Maddox and the ledger. They will not follow your rules for a clean fight. If it all falls apart, Lila, if the plan goes to hell, I still choose to protect you first, before the files, before the revenge. You, that is my word." I turned, pulling my legs up, shifting to face him. "And I will not let you be a solitary knife. Angelo, you are not just a weapon you are sending in. I will be your eyes. We do this, but we do it together. You do not go down alone. That is my word." He looked at me, and I knew he saw me. Not the waitress, not the victim, me. He reached up, his fingers tracing my jawline. A vibration, sharp and sudden. It was not me, it was him. He broke eye contact, his hand dipping into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. The screen lit up his face in a harsh, white light. His expression tightened. His eyes went hard, the brief softness gone, replaced by the strategist. "What is it?" He did not answer. He just held the phone out for me to read the text message. It was from one of the twins. "Astoria has upped security. Double rotation on all floors. Maddox is spooked. Someone talked." The night was over. The warmth of the moment evaporated. The cold, sharp wind of the battle rushing in to take its place. Angelo stood in one fluid motion, pulling me up with him. He did not let go of my hand. He just tightened his grip, his knuckles pressing against mine. He looked at the glittering, poisonous tower of the Astoria across the water. "Good," he said. "Let them be afraid." He squeezed my hand. We were ready. The clock was ticking. 9 o'clock. Sharp. The Astoria Bastion View was not a hotel. It was a statement. A tower of glass and arrogance piercing the Port Ashbury skyline. The charity event was a thin veneer, a way for the city's corrupt to launder their reputations in public. I was a waitress again. But this uniform was not the tired powder blue of the Blue Lantern. This was a sharp, black bistro uniform, crisp and expensive. The apron was heavy linen. The role was the same, but I was no longer a victim. I was a Trojan horse. Angelo's team, the twins, were already inside, dressed in identical charcoal gray polo shirts with a small, embroidered logo Astoria audio visual. They were checking microphones on the podium, moving with a quiet, technical efficiency. Angelo was with them, holding a clipboard, looking every part the floor manager. Our eyes met once, a brief, solid connection across the glittering ballroom. My primary piece of equipment was not a notepad. It was a brushed silver tray. It looked standard, but Corrado, in the vault, had shown it to me. One of the small, decorative rivets near the handle was not a rivet. It was a high-resolution, wide-angle micro camera. The audio feed was live. patched directly to an earpiece Angelo wore. My job was simple: serve the vipers. "Excuse me, ma'am, sir." I moved through the crowd, my tray held high. The ballroom was on the 21st floor, a sea of champagne and superficial laughter. I kept my eyes down, my posture submissive, the perfect servant, invisible. I made my way to the roped-off VIP section. Vern Maddox was there, exactly as Angelo had described. He was smiling, his face tan, his silver hair immaculate. He looked like a statesman. He was laughing with another man, a thick-necked brute in a suit 2 sizes too small. This was not Royce. This was the new chief of the Iron Ledger, a man named Gallo. I approached the table, my heart a cold stone in my chest. More champagne, Mr. Maddox. Maddox waved me off without looking, but Gallo stopped me, his eyes running over me. I kept my face blank. "Just fill it," he grunted. I leaned in, my hand steady, pouring the golden liquid. The tray was perfectly angled, the camera rivet aimed directly at the 2 men. "The final shipment," Maddox was saying, his voice a low, confident murmur under the jazz quartet. "We move it before dawn. The Hawkline route is officially closed after tonight. We burn the manifests at the secondary warehouse, and the whole thing vanishes." And the girl Gallo growled, the waitress from the diner. My blood froze. Maddox chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "The girl, she is a ghost. She and that ridiculous Bastone, they hit a dead-end container. By the time they figure it out, we will be clean. Let them play in the ashes." I finished pouring. "Enjoy, sir." I turned, walking away, my legs stiff. I had it. I had the confirmation. Secondary warehouse. I was almost clear of the VIP section when a hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, hard. "I know you." I looked. My stomach turned to ice. It was Royce Kellen. He was not in a suit. He was in a cheap security uniform, the kind the hotel hired for big events. His face was a patchwork of old, yellowing bruises. His bad wrist was in a black brace. He was desperate, broken, and he had just found his focus. "It is you," he hissed, his one good eye wide. He shoved me, knocking the tray from my hands. It clattered to the marble floor, but I did not care. The feed was cut. He shouted, his voice cracking with panic and rage. "It is her, the waitress. She is with Bastone alarm. The music stopped. The clock in my head started a frantic, deafening countdown. Gallo and his men were on their feet. Maddox's face, a moment ago so smooth, was a mask of cold fury. Security was moving in. Then, Angelo's voice, calm and clear in my earpiece, the one hidden by my hair. Style, Lila, not violence. Now. The ballroom lights, the chandeliers, the wall sconces, they all went dark. The entire half of the floor plunged into blackness. A second later, the emergency lights kicked in. They were not white. They were a deep, unsettling, spectral blue. This was the signal. Across town, Corrado, sitting in his car outside the offices of the Night Beacon, saw the text message from the twins. Blue. He got out of the car, carrying a locked briefcase. Operation Double Mirror, Phase 1, was live. He was delivering my father's ledger and the photographs from Container 7B. In the blue-lit chaos of the ballroom, Royce grabbed my arm again. "You are not getting away." I did not fight him. I let him drag me, pretending to stumble. "He is in the kitchen," I screamed. "Bastone." He went to the kitchen. It was the bait. Royce, desperate to be the hero who caught the big boss, shoved me ahead of him. "You take me now." He pushed me through the swinging doors into the vast, stainless steel kitchen. It was frantic, chefs and staff shouting in the blue emergency light. "Where is he?" Royce yelled, spinning me around. "He is right behind you," I said. Royce spun, expecting Angelo. He found me. I had grabbed a pressurized soda siphon from the bar station. I aimed it and pulled the trigger. A high-pressure stream of ice-cold seltzer water hit him directly in the face. It was not a knife. It was not a gun. But the shock was absolute. He screamed, dropping me, his hands flying to his stinging eyes. "My eyes, you." I did not wait. I shoved past him, back toward the service door. But as I went, I snagged the micro camera, which I had palmed when I fell, and dropped it onto a high shelf of pots. The audio was still live. I heard Royce, alone and blinded, spitting. She is working with Bastogne. Maddox is right. They are trying to expose the whole thing, Hawkline. She has the ledger, a full confession, broadcast to an empty room and Angelo's earpiece. I slipped out into the service hallway. Phase 2 was mine. Angelo, meanwhile, was not in the kitchen. In the confusion, he had moved to Maddox. He did not grab him. He simply appeared at his side in the blue gloom, like a well-dressed ghost. "Mr. Maddox, a word." Maddox and his 2 bodyguards found themselves in a small, adjoining conference room, cornered by Angelo and the twins, who were no longer techs. "What is the meaning of this?" Maddox blustered. "It means your operation is over," Angelo said, his voice quiet. He placed a single piece of paper on the table. "That is a warehouse transfer order. You are going to sign it, authorizing an independent inspector to review the contents of all Hawkline properties, effective immediately." Maddox laughed. "You are insane." "Am I?" Angelo checked his watch. "In approximately 3 minutes, the Night Beacon will receive a package containing a full shipping ledger from a deceased weighmaster named Noel Quintero. It details every illegal shipment you have run for 10 years. Maddox's face went white. "That is the appetizer," Angelo continued. "The main course is that my inspector is already at your secondary warehouse. He just needs your signature for access. If you sign, perhaps we can contain this. If you do not..." It was a brilliant game of Go, a perfect lie wrapped in a devastating truth. You cannot..." Maddox was stammering. "Sign it, Verna, or the next call I make releases your private bank accounts." Maddox grabbed the pen, his hand shaking, and scrawled a signature. At that exact moment, the main doors of the ballroom burst open. It was not more security. It was a half-dozen journalists, led by a woman with a press badge from the Night Beacon, and she was live-streaming from her phone. "Mr. Maddox, is it true you are under investigation for using the Harbor-wide authority to launder money for the Iron Ledger?" They had Corrado's package. The story was breaking. Angelo took the signed paper from Maddox's numb hand. He smiled. "Style," he murmured. Gallo and the Iron Ledger crew saw the cameras. They saw their world collapsing. They did not fight. They turned and fled, shoving their way toward the service elevators. Chaos erupted. Angelo's men, the techs, were suddenly guiding people. "This way, please," calmly, to the main elevators. "The fire department is on its way." They were creating safe exits for the civilians, separating the innocent from the guilty. They were the only pocket of order in the panic. I met Angelo in the lobby. The building was flashing with real fire alarms now. Guests were streaming out. It was done. We had won. We had the signature. We had the live broadcast. Maddox was trapped, his face on every screen in the city, the word Hawkline echoing in the press. Angelo looked at me, a question in his eyes. I just nodded. I was safe. He permitted himself a small, victorious smile. He pulled out his phone, not to make a call, but to check the feed from the Night Beacon. Then the phone rang in his hand. It was not a number he recognized. He frowned, putting it to his ear. "Yes." I watched his face, the victory, the relief, the controlled power. It all vanished. It was replaced by the same look he had when I told him about my father, a cold, dark, analytical stillness. He did not say anything. He just listened. Finally, he lowered the phone. "Angelo," I whispered, "what is it? Did the warehouse team get in?" He looked at me, his eyes black, reflecting the flashing alarm lights. "That was the Port Authority fire chief. He is an old friend." "What is wrong?" "Pier 9 is on fire," Angelo said, his voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "The whole pier an inferno, the warehouse, the containers, everything." But Maddox just signed, and we won." "No," Angelo said. He looked back at the hotel, at the ruined party of the man we thought was the kingpin. "We did not. We were the distraction. Maddox was the decoy. While we were here, hitting the front door, he held my gaze, and I felt the bottom drop out of the world. Someone just burned the real evidence. We did not wait for the elevator. We ran. Through the chaos of the lobby, out the revolving doors, and into the night, Angelo's sedan was where he left it, a silent black shadow waiting for its master. We were in it and moving before the hotel's alarms had faded, flying through the streets, away from the glass tower and toward the water. We did not need directions. The sky over Pier 9 was a roaring, bright orange. It was not just a fire, it was an inferno. The warehouse was a skeleton of white-hot steel, pouring smoke and embers into the night sky. We hit the blockade 2 blocks out. The sirens were wrong. They were not the city fire department. They were black sedans with flashing blue lights. And the men standing guard wore the pristine, official uniforms of the Department of Municipal Integrity. They were not fighting the fire. They were containing the scene, holding back the real fire trucks that were now arriving. "They are protecting it," I said, my voice hollow, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. They are letting it burn. Maddox was not the boss. He was a decoy. We were the distraction. Angelo hit the dashboard with his fist, a single, violent motion, the secondary warehouse. It was a lie. This was always the real target. The one who set this fire is still out there. He was about to throw the car into reverse, but I grabbed his arm. The fire, the pier, my father. "Q9," I whispered, staring at the flames. "Lila, not now. We have to—" "No." "Listen," I said, my voice sharp. "Q9, my father's mark on the ledger. I thought it meant his initial and the pier. Quintero, 9. But it was container 7B. It did not make sense. But he had this saying about his work. He worked at the way station, the station at Rail 9. I turned to him, my eyes wide. He always said the ground was hollow there, to protect the sensitive scales. Angelo. Q9 is not a container. It is a location. It is under Rail 9. He did not question me. He did not hesitate. He spun the wheel, the tires screaming, and drove the car over the curb, onto the adjoining pier, crashing through a flimsy chain-link fence. We were running. "We need masks," he yelled over the roar of the flames. He saw a stack of heavy canvas tarps and a rain barrel. We dunked the heavy fabric, the water icy, and wrapped the soaking wet canvas around our faces. We ran into the heat. It was hell. The heat was a solid wall. The air was thick with cinders. The warehouse we had been in only hours before was just a memory, a roaring bonfire. We ran past it, our feet pounding on the heavy planks, toward the railway loading tracks. There I pointed, the metal track, stenciled with a fading white. 9 was set into a concrete pad. The metal itself was glowing a dull red, but the concrete looked stable. Angelo grabbed a heavy steel pry bar from a maintenance rack. "Stand back." He jammed the bar under the rail tie and threw his entire weight against it. He was a man of impossible, focused strength. With a groan of tortured metal, the heavy rail section lifted, popping free from its moorings. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the blistering heat. Beneath the rail, in the concrete, was a small, square void, and inside that void, untouched by the flames, was a small steel box, a fireproof safe, my father's real legacy. I jammed my gloved hands into the hole, the metal searing hot even through the leather. I did not care. I pulled it free. It was heavy. It was intact. Drop it now." The voice was a pathetic, shaking whimper. We turned. Royce Kellen? He was standing 10 feet away, a ghost backlit by the inferno. His clothes were singed, his face a mask of soot and tears. He was holding a pistol with both hands, but he was shaking so violently he could barely aim it. "Give it to me," he sobbed. "It is my only chance. Maddox, Gallo, they are all gone. I have to give him something, the real boss, please." He was aiming at Angelo. I did not think. I stepped directly in front of Angelo, my body shielding his. The steel box was clutched against my chest. "Lila, move," Angelo commanded, his voice sharp with an anger born of fear for me. I kept my eyes on Royce. "No, it is over, Royce. I will shoot, I swear I will." "If you pull that trigger, you kill the only chance you have left," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the roar of the fire. "That camera right there." I pointed up into the smoking rafters, to a security camera I knew was there. It is still live. The night beacon is broadcasting this whole fire. The whole city is watching. You shoot us, you are a murderer caught on tape. You put the gun down. You are the victim who gets to testify against the man who burned this city. He stared at me, his finger trembling on the trigger. He looked from me to the box, to the flames, then back to me. His entire broken life hung in that second. He lowered the gun. He just broke. The pistol fell from his shaking hands, clattering onto the pier. He turned and stumbled away. A hollow man, disappearing into the smoke. I heard shouting seconds later. The dock workers, my father's friends, had broken the police line. They had him. The crew from the night beacon found us then, their camera light a white, piercing eye in the smoke. I did not move. I just stood there, breathing, and held up the steel box for the world to see. That image of me holding the proof, my face covered in grime, with the skeleton of Pier 9 burning behind me, was the end of Vernon Maddox. The live stream broke him. The Iron Ledger dissolved into rumor. Port Ashbury was in shock. The adrenaline fled. The smoke cleared. Angelo staggered back, leaning heavily against a metal pylon. He was breathing hard. "Angelo," I ran to him. A long, jagged shard of smoldering wood was embedded in his upper arm, just below the shoulder. He had taken it when the warehouse frame collapsed, right as he was prying the rail. He had not made a sound. He slid down the pylon, slumping onto the pier, his face pale beneath the soot. He looked at the wound, then at me. I dropped to my knees in front of him. My hands were shaking, but I placed them gently on his shirt, next to the raw wound. The tears finally came, hot and fast, cutting clean tracks through the dirt on my face. "It is my turn," I whispered, my voice thick. "It is my turn to protect you." The fire was out by dawn. All that remained was a black, steaming ruin that smelled of wet ash and the sea. We sat on the sea wall, wrapped in clean blankets, the pier now quiet. Angelo's arm was bandaged, resting in a makeshift sling. I was shivering, the cold of the morning finally finding me. He put his good arm around me, pulling me tight against his side, shielding me from the wind. I turned, burying my face in his chest. He just held me, his chin resting on the top of my head. We had survived. I looked up at him. His face was bruised, tired, but the darkness in his eyes was gone. The hunted look was gone. It was just him. He looked down at me, and I saw the deep, aching relief. He leaned down, and I met him. We kissed, surrounded by the cold morning mist. It was not a kiss of fire. It was a kiss of salt and ash, of survival. It was slow and deep, and it was a promise kept. His hand, the good one, moved to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair, holding me steady, leading the pace. It was a kiss that said, "We made it." I put my hand on his chest, feeling the steady, strong beat of his heart. "Stay," I whispered against his lips. The city woke up to a new reality. The Harbor-wide Commerce Authority was dissolved, investigated by a new civilian committee, Vern Maddox, facing the evidence from the steel box, the original tapes, the photos, the contracts with his real signature, had resigned for personal reasons. The Hawkline warehouses were seized. I did not leave. I took the money from the diner, and with a fund raised by the dock workers, I bought the Blue Lantern. I spent a week cleaning it, and in booth 4, I hung the framed silk handkerchief, a monument. He walked in on a Tuesday afternoon, a month later. No coat, no bodyguards. Just Angelo, his arm healed, a faint scar on his skin. He slid onto a stool at the counter. "I hear the pancakes here are terrible," he said, his eyes smiling. "Only if you order them burnt," I replied, pouring him a black coffee. He reached across the counter. I put my hand in his. "We still have enemies," I said quietly. "The one who set that fire, the real boss, is still out there." He smiled, squeezing my hand. "I know. But we also have more breakfasts." The next morning, I arrived to open the diner. A small, square package wrapped in brown paper was on the doormat. Angelo was already inside, waiting in the pre-dawn quiet. He had a key. I set the box on the counter. We opened it together. Inside, on black velvet, was a heavy, silver lighter. It was identical to his, but as I picked it up, I saw the engraving. It was the Black Hawk, its wings spread and carved deep across it, a single diagonal line. The hawk was crossed out. I looked at Angelo. He looked at me. The story was not over. But this time, we were starting it together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really loved it, please hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.